With RFK Jr. as the new head of HHS in America, there's a lot of talk, finally, about the causes of various chronic illnesses, especially in childhood, especially in our kids, when these numbers seem to be getting higher and higher, and nobody seems to be able to explain why. The one you're probably hearing the most about is autism. And while this is a very good thing, it is also something that is loaded with emotion and it can be riddled with guilt. Today, I want to talk to you about this whole process of awakening to things that have been hidden from us when it comes to standard recommendations and childhood guidance. Because if you learn something that you didn't know before that might have caused you to make a different decision with your children, I don't want you to be paralyzed with guilt if you start to try to make connections to where you think that maybe a decision that you made might have led to something your child is now dealing with. But that's easy to do. It's easy to get caught up in that and get bogged down in that guilt. So today, let's tackle this hard subject and move forward together as mamas with our heads held high. I'm going to give you 7 things to help you move forward without guilt. Let's go. Are you a Christian woman yearning for a beautiful, joyful pregnancy and birth with a focus on God, not medical tests? Are you worried the birth you want isn't possible and you're tired of being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Hey mama, I'm Lori, host of Your Birth God's Way. I'm a certified nurse midwife now, but I wasn't always. After working for nearly 20 years in the broken maternity system, I too was in your shoes wondering how I could have the birth I wanted and that I felt God meant for me to have. I found a secret that has actually been known since the beginning of time. God's way is the best way. Spoiler alert, God made us and our babies, and He knows us best. He designed us perfectly for pregnancy, birth, and nourishing our babies after birth, if we work with His design and not against it. In this podcast, you'll learn how to be healthy and have joy during this time of life that will be over before you know it. So if you're ready to reclaim your birth and your babies for His glory, go turn on a few episodes of Bluey for that little one on your hip so you can put the focus back on you for a few minutes with me. It's review time. Today's review comes from Muffy's mom. Back in March, the title says, The Best Natural Birthing Podcast. And can I just say to start out, thank you so much for that title. I am humbled by that title because there's a lot of natural birthing podcasts out there. So thank you so much for that kind intro to this podcast. To this review for this podcast. It says, first of all, I love listening to Lori because it always feels like sitting with a friend. Sometimes I just listen to have that sweet company in Christian fellowship while I drive or clean up the house. But most of all, I love her faith combined with her knowledge and experience. She is exhaustive in her topics on natural birthing, from nutrition to breastfeeding, and so much more. If there is something you want some info about, it's probably here somewhere. And if you want a humble and super informed podcaster to listen to regarding natural birth, this is it. I love it. I love that, Muffy's mom. Thank you so much for that sweet review. You know, I've thought about that before because sometimes I feel like I'm just sitting and talking with you guys and I want it to feel that way and feel conversational, but obviously I can't see you while I'm talking. I'm just talking to a camera. It can be a little weird sometimes, and I've thought about trying to make the set to where I'm, sitting in a chair, hanging out, whatever, to make it a little bit more informal. But unfortunately, the setup that I have and the very limited resources that I have, it ends up being like this. And if you're watching on YouTube, you see what I'm talking about. I'm in my office. But I appreciate that you still feel like it's just a friend talking to you, because that's really how I want it to feel. I want you to be able to see that I'm no different from you guys. I just chose a path that has given me a wealth of information and experience, and God has given me this platform to talk to you guys, and I'm humbled to be a part of your journey. And so many of you are making choices that maybe you wouldn't have made if you hadn't found your way this way, if God hadn't led you to hear these things. So I'm just thankful for you, and I love you guys, and I appreciate you so much. So thank you, Muffy's mom, for leaving me a review, and for anybody who hasn't left me a review yet. And by the way, if you're on YouTube and you can't leave me a review like I talked about last week, that's fine. Just leave me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, do the things that you know that help people grow, because I'm a very, very small show. And one of the best ways that I find new moms is, one, through those podcast reviews that I tell you about, but then also is you just sharing and letting your friends know to come check me out. So thank you guys for always encouraging me. And with that, let's get going on our topic today, because it's a hard one. It's a really heavy one. And I talk a lot about a lot of stuff on this podcast that's news to a lot of listeners. I talk about it as if, and sometimes I assume that you already know what I'm talking about, but this stuff is new to a lot of you all because some of you are just now finding your way into this world. And I shed light on things that maybe you didn't realize were going on. Maybe you've been in the world of just blindly trusting because you didn't realize you shouldn't. That's okay. I'm just glad you're here now. Sometimes people will call me negative and they'll say that I put a negative spin on things. And for those of you who think that, I wish you knew how much I don't tell you because I don't want to seem so negative. I wish you knew how much happens that I don't want to completely put out there. When I say I wish you knew, I kind of wish you did. I'm glad you don't know because I do want you to be able to walk through this process without fear. But I want you to know enough to know you need to do your own research. But sometimes when we do all this research, we start to learn things, right? I want you to be realistic. And I want you to have your eyes very wide open. And that's very different from being negative, by the way. I want you to be, like I said, realistic. Not walk in thinking that everything's all roses. And it doesn't do you any good for me to tell you that it is. It does you good for me to tell you the reality so you can realize it and then you can choose better for you so that you don't have to deal with that world. Negativity comes from a position of disempowerment and cynicism and victim mentality. And that is not what I present here. That is not what I want for you. I want you to learn how to be empowered to choose wisely. And unfortunately, as I said, that means realizing that many of the things that we've told are best for us really are not. I focus a lot on the childbirth world and then newborn days and weeks. And that is what is on the forefront of the news right now. If you're following the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement, you're hearing this. You're hearing that President Trump has told RFK to try to figure out what it is that's causing all this childhood illness and the autism epidemic. He's given him free rein, basically, to try to figure this out. And as a result, there's a great debate and a great backlash that's happening. For the life of me, I cannot understand why people so vehemently oppose looking into everything. They will quickly declare that it is not one thing or it is not another thing and that the science is settled on it. But y'all know science is settled. That's the whole point of science, right? The whole point of science is to look at things continually and discover more and more, prove what's right, prove what's wrong, figure out if there's something better. So I don't get this, except for I do get it. I said I didn't, right? I do get it because it's dark. And the people who are so vehemently opposed to us looking into things like, say, for instance, the shots, they have financial incentive to keep you from looking into the shots. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So here's what I first want you to realize. As you're listening to all this debate and you're thinking about it, there is no cause for the childhood diseases or for autism that has really fully been completely ruled out. And the reason I know that is because as humans, we do things in a way that can't really fully be studied in a way that isolates variables. Okay, couldn't quite think of the word. That we can't make it to where only one thing changes because we all do things a little bit different. We live in a little bit different environments. We have different diets. We, have different stressors and things like that. And so there really has been no way for any one thing to be studied to the extent that it can be ruled out of being a cause for anything. And so because of that, we need to study everything, even if it makes us uncomfortable. And I think as a mom, it is so easy to worry and to feel guilty and to take blame for things that your child deals with. It's just kind of natural. And the issue that I worry a lot about on this podcast and just in conversation with friends and things like that is I worry that if you start to figure out what some of the causes of some of these things are, that you're going to fall into guilt if you connect the dots and you start to think that maybe a choice you made is the reason that your child is dealing with whatever it is they're dealing with. I want to bring light to some things that I've learned so that women are able to make strong, informed decisions. But I know that in doing that, some women who already have children with these issues, like maybe autism, are going to have these feelings. They might develop guilt because they feel like they've caused the outcome. That mom that I'm talking about might be you. And if it isn't you yet, it might be you in the future. As more and more discoveries are made, we start to see that maybe more and more things that we've participated in are causing damage, and we just didn't realize it. And some real studies are finally, hopefully, going to be happening. And so it's possible that we're going to find out news that we didn't want to hear. They're not just looking at shots, they're looking at a lot of other things. They're trying to find what it is that could be causing all of this childhood illness. If you have a child that has something chronic going on, and you come to the conclusion that a medical decision that you made may be the cause for that child's problems, it is almost inevitable that you're going to feel some level of guilt. So what can you do? Because we know you can't stay there. You still got to be mom. You still got to take care of your babies. So I've got to help you figure out a way to not stay there. So here's 7 things. And while they're not in any particular order, they kind of are in order roughly. 7 things for you to keep in mind and for you to do to make sure you don't stay in this guilt. Thing 1, I think you need to let yourself grieve a little bit. Now, I don't want you to grieve dysfunctionally, but when you realize that your child is dealing with something that maybe they didn't have to, it's okay to be sad. And in fact, I would venture to say that you need to let yourself progress through this grief process a little bit so that you can get those emotions flowing and then get them out. If you hold them in, they will fester at some point. They will get you at some point in the future. So it's really healthier for you to let them go and work through them as you encounter this. You know, it may not be that your child lost their life. In fact, it probably isn't that your child lost their life, but grief can still be present, and I don't want you to totally ignore it. And I don't want you to think that you're silly for feeling that way, for feeling like you've lost something. But I don't want you to stay there. Just like I wouldn't want you to stay there if you did lose your child. If God forbid you've dealt with the loss of a child, that grief is deeper than anyone can really put into words. But everyone who goes through a loss like that has to figure out a way to pick up and move on at some point. No one can stay there forever. They have to move forward. And that's no different for you. If you're feeling this guilt and this grief, I want you to work through those emotions, but I cannot let you stay there. You've got to pick up and move on and find a way to make the best of the situation that you're in. So with that, thing 2 is to hold your head up and breathe and don't allow yourself to carry guilt. Maybe think of it as a backpack and you have all the guilt in your backpack. And when you've worked through this process, I want you to take that backpack off and sit it down and stop carrying it because it's not serving you. It's not serving you to stay in that guilt. I want it to prompt you to grow and prompt you to do better, but I don't want it to be something that you carry, and I don't want it to be something that you beat yourself up over. I want you to remind yourself over and over and over and over again, and I'm going to say it several times in this podcast, you cannot know what you do not know. You just can't. You need to realize that there's an entire industry with more power and more money than you can fully comprehend. There's an entire industry fighting to make sure that you didn't know what you didn't know. And they're still fighting to this day, and they are not happy that more mamas like you are learning what they're learning. They are spending untold amounts of money to keep you from knowing. They are doing things like silencing people like me or other podcasters and other independent voices out there who are trying to wake people up because they don't want you to know. You've got to understand that that industry is dark and it is purposeful, and it has been very successful in getting its products through to market without the full truth being widely known. So knowing that, know that you simply cannot know what you don't know. If you didn't know anyone who shared the truth with you, and you've never known to doubt medical professionals, and you never known to research things on your own, how could you have known? You couldn't have. Maybe you did know someone who tried to share information with you, and you weren't ready to listen. You need to realize even in that you have been deeply conditioned to believe that the person who wanted to share that information with you was crazy. They were the one that was trying to enlighten you. They were a whack job. You probably have been told they wear tinfoil hats. They're conspiracy theorists. They're crazy. So of course you didn't listen, because why would you listen to somebody like that? You cannot know what you don't know, and they have worked hard to make sure that even when you start to encounter that message that maybe there's something going on here, you doubt it or you completely dismiss it out of hand. So do not beat yourself up. Again, realize that billions of dollars have been invested into the back ends of these products to make sure you want them and you don't question them. The psychology is deep and you just didn't know. And you must give yourself grace for that. Thing 3. Now that you do know, and maybe you have discovered that maybe that something has happened to your child that didn't have to, I want you to also know that there are natural ways to alleviate the suffering that comes with many of the things that I'm referring to. These chronic illnesses and autism, they all have different alternative, as they call them, alternative modalities available to help. I can't go through all of them because there's so many things we could be talking about here. There's so many illnesses, right? There's autism. Autism is just one of them, but there's so many other ones. There's a lot of options out there that you're going to have to go look for, and you're going to have to research and find. These alternative modalities are there, but guess what? Those same people who told you that your friend who tried to enlighten you was crazy, those same people are going to tell you that the things, those alternative modalities I mentioned, they're going to tell you that those are crazy and they don't work. They're going to try to get you not even to look for them. They're going to try to get you to dismiss them as soon as you hear them because they sound weird. Realize that when they label something crazy, or they label someone crazy, and they tell you that you shouldn't listen to them, that is your first clue to tune in closer and pay more attention, because there is likely truth there, and probably a lot of it. Seek out ways to help your child heal if in any way possible, if possible. And if something seems out there, kind of like wacky or crazy, research it. Don't write it off. You never know what you might find if you just keep looking. Thing 4, along those same lines, keep researching. Keep researching. Everybody who is on this journey, the journey of being away from the conventional way of doing things, the journey of thinking for yourself, the journey of natural methods of doing everything in life, whether it be laboring and giving birth or, healing your family. Everybody starts this journey somewhere. They all wake up because of something. I woke up first around the bread issue. Well, actually, the more I think about it, I think I woke up first around the doula into midwife issue when I realized how thoroughly I'd been lied to about the way that the labor process works. I think that was actually the first step, and the reason is because of how I found out about the bread issue. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a second, but that first issue is going to wake you up, and it's going to take you a minute to really fully realize what's going on. But once you get to the truth and you work through this cognitive dissonance of realizing that, wait a minute, everything I've been told about this is wrong. And once you get through all that, you're going to start questioning other things. It leads you to question everything. Remember, it's easier to believe a lie that you've been told 1,000 times than to believe a truth that you're hearing for the first time. But that doesn't make that lie any less of a lie. So just understand, you've been lied to pretty thoroughly. And it's going to take a minute to really swallow the pill of understanding that, because you really want to believe that you can see through things. And maybe you haven't been able to, but I guarantee you're getting better at it. So don't quit. Keep researching, keep looking, keep digging. And that brings me to thing 5, and that is tell others, and don't care if they think you're crazy. Don't worry about it. They're going to think you're crazy. That's okay. Be crazy. Find your other crazy people. Oops, I just skipped into thing 6. I take that back. Don't find your people yet. We're going to find them in thing 6. Some people are not going to listen, and that is okay. But a few will. I mentioned just a second ago how I don't really know for sure which one came first, but I'm pretty sure that the midwifery thing happened first to really make me wake up when I realized that everything about my entire career had been based on, lies here, lies there about what was best for women. So I think that's where it started, because where I started my bread journey, believe it or not, came from a Facebook post. And they tell you Facebook posts don't change anything for anybody, right? Well, for some people they do. And the reason that I figured out that midwifery had to have come first is because the post that was made is by a fellow midwife. And I wouldn't have known her before I started the midwifery journey. So she made a post about what was done to the wheat crop in America before harvest. And I realized, oh my, we're eating this. I have to stop eating this. But how do you do that? Like, how do you have bread if you don't buy bread? Even if I make it, how do I not use store-bought flour? I was just asking a lot of questions like, but how? But how? But how? And that led me to find out about wheat berries and grinding wheat and making bread that way, which led me to learn about Sue Becker, which led me to Atlanta, Georgia, to her class, which led me to now 7.5 years later, almost 8 years later now, still making bread for my family. Okay. So the thing that opened my eyes was the bread issue. The thing beyond the medical world that opened my eyes was this bread issue. And so you've got to understand that wouldn't have ever happened if my friend, my fellow midwife, hadn't made that post. Now, she wasn't verbally telling me, obviously, but she talked about it. She posted, she got me thinking. And sometimes when you just plant these seeds of things to think about, you get people thinking, and you might be the one who keeps someone else from going down the road of making choices that lead to chronic illness. Thing 6, again, as I alluded to before, I tend to mix my points together. Thing 6 is find your people, because it can be lonely. It's a long and lonely road. I tell people when they message me about bread, or they message me about shots, or they message me about milk, or whatever the issue is that they want to talk about, I tell them frequently, get ready. It's a long and lonely road once you start down the rabbit trail. When you start saying, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm not doing that anymore, and everything, and you mention it to your, as they say, normie friends, the ones who haven't figured it out yet, and then they start looking at you a little funny. Okay. And so a lot of your friends are going to start looking at you a little funny. That's fine. You might lose some friends over this. That's fine. Find your people, because they're out there. This natural health thing, like I said, it's a long and lonely road, and you're going to need people. I've got a Facebook group. It's mainly birth related, but there's a whole lot of natural wellness conversation that happens in there as well. And we'd love to have you join that if you haven't already. But you also need, and by the way, the link for that is down in the show notes if you want to join us. But you also need people in your area. You need in-person people. So look for crunchy or natural or farmer-friendly groups on Facebook in your area. So maybe you can find some friends who are like-minded. And then too, just talking to people like at church or, in the community, you'd be surprised who you might find. Pay attention, maybe stay in the organic aisle a little bit longer when you go to the conventional grocery stores and see who you can find there that are looking for better options. And you never know what kind of conversations might pop up. Look for your people. Find your people. You need people. Just find them. And if nothing else, sometimes it's hard to get in-person people, especially if you live out, in rural areas. I hate that word, by the way. It can be a little harder. So maybe online is going to be your place, and that's fine. There's lots of crunchy groups, and there's my group, and there's all kinds of places that you can find your people so that you're not crazy. There's a whole lot of us out there trying to do right and trying to make better decisions and trying to do things differently. And then lastly, thing 7, I want you to remember that God loves you. And I know that seems real elementary and real simple, but it's true. He loves you. And I want you to talk to him and ask him to help you find truth in whatever topic it is that you're researching. Whatever it is that you're trying to find out more about, ask him to help you find the truth. Ask him to help you find the things that will help your child heal if need be. And stay in his word so that you can look to him for strength each and every day and not get bogged down with guilt, because he doesn't want you bogged down with guilt when you are living for him. Okay? I hope this has helped you. Many of your people, like I mentioned, are already in our Facebook group, so I hope you'll come join us there. And if you're pregnant or you're wanting to learn more about the truth of God's design for pregnancy and birth in a cohesive and comprehensive way that is different than what the world has been telling you for all these years, because if most of what they're telling you is not true. If you want to find a place where you can learn the truth about this process, my course is the way to do it. There is no other course out there quite like this one that is so loaded with scripture and also coupled with both medical and the medical and the natural side of my experience, so that you can learn and it can help you to mold your journey through having your baby God's way. To try it out for free, you just need to go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course free trial. Or to sign up for the entire course and get started on having your birth God's way, go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com/CEC. Links for both of those are down in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions or concerns, or you just want to talk about this, hop over in our Facebook group and let's get a good conversation going about it, because I do not want you carrying guilt a day longer than you have to. See you back here next week. Real quick, if today's episode blessed you in any way, would you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a quick 5-star written review? It'll take you less than a minute, but it's the best thank you you can give me. And it will help my show to reach more mamas just like you, so we can all find God's best for our families. I'll see you right back here in a few days.